Breaking news in the National Football League. The Baltimore Ravens and John Harbaugh are splitting up. The Ravens are moving on after 18 seasons with Harbaugh as head coach. And this is a massive gift for the Miami Dolphins. And at least has a lot of ramifications at the very bare minimum. John Harbaugh now becomes, without a question, the top NFL head coach candidate. And even though Miami has not made an official statement on Mike McDaniel in terms if they're keeping him in 2026 or firing him, Harbaugh being available and being on the open market certainly makes it more likely that the Dolphins fire Mike McDaniel because he would be a clear upgrade. And I believe Miami should go out and make this move, or at least do your best. And I'll explain all of the ramifications, all of the report, all of the fallout on today's show. But this is why you subscribe, because we give you daily, free, informative, and entertaining Dolphins content, whether it is around the NFL, trade rumors, coaching news, we got you covered. As soon as Harbaugh was fired, my initial reaction, oh my goodness, Mike McDaniel is going to be fired. And you can actually see that if you follow me on Twitter, by the way, link at the bottom of the screen. But Schefter reporting that Harbaugh is expected to become the top head coach candidate. Multiple teams are now expected to be interested in hiring him, and his presence is expected to have big ramifications. As I alluded to, there are a couple teams that have not fired their head coach that could view Harbaugh as a clear upgrade and try to go all in, the full court press, to get Harbaugh to become their next head coach. The Buccaneers and Todd Bowles come to mind, and the Miami Dolphins with Mike McDaniel come to mind. I mean, you see what Jordan Schultz is reporting. The ripple effects of Harbaugh's firing could have several clubs with a head coach currently under contract making them interested. Like, this has been consistent reporting over the last week, really, if we're going to be honest. Like, if you go back to Sunday, Albert Breer, who's really tapped in, Sports Illustrated reporter, he, in an article, said that John Harbaugh becoming available could absolutely impact Mike McDaniel's job security and could push Stephen Ross to push his chips all the way into the middle of the table, go all in for the former Ravens head coach, the former NFL Super Bowl winning head coach, coach of the year, and move on from Mike McDaniel. You've seen Josina Anderson report that as well. Diana Rossini has alluded to it. So I just think with Harbaugh actually being fired, not speculative anymore, it happened. Mike McDaniel, I think his days in Miami are absolutely numbered. And pinned comment on today's show, should Miami fire Mike McDaniel to hire John Harbaugh? Type Y for yes or type N for no. It's an absolute no-brainer for me. Listen, I want Mike McDaniel fired, period. So John Harbaugh becoming available doesn't really change my opinion on what Miami should do at head coach. But it just further emphasizes that I think this is the time to move on from Mike McDaniel. Don't waste any more time here. Let's go all in and try to get the best head coach on the market. Now, I want to make this abundantly clear. It's going to be difficult to sway John Harbaugh to become the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. There are now 7 head coach openings around the NFL. Now, obviously, Harbaugh is only really going to have 6 of these teams reach out to him because he's not going to go back to the Ravens. But the same Miami comes available and they fire Mike McDaniel. Well, then now that's 8 total openings. Maybe Tampa Bay and Todd Bowles split ways, and maybe that's 9 now. So you look at these teams, and I'm not going to try to tell you that they're all better jobs than the Miami Dolphins, but there are a couple of them that certainly are. Like, the Baltimore Ravens is a more attractive landing spot for a head coach than anyone. The Ravens are the top head coach opening without a shadow of doubt. So outside of John Harbaugh, the Ravens will get whoever they want that is currently unemployed or at least not a head coach. And when you think about for John Harbaugh specifically and who Miami might have to compete with if they want to get him as their next head coach, the 2 teams that come to mind the most are the New York Giants, the Atlanta Falcons, and then I'll throw in the Las Vegas Raiders there, but I really think it's the Giants and Falcons. And we've already seen it being reported by Adam Schefter that Harbaugh is maybe interested in New York, and he is definitely the Giants' top candidate and top target as well. So it might come down to Harbaugh, and if he wants to go to New York rather than in Atlanta, a Las Vegas, or a Miami that becomes available. All three have different reasons why they're intriguing. I think Miami, and for the people who are out there will say the Dolphins aren't an appealing enough job, I get it because they're not going to be competitive in 2026. But are we going to call a spade here and say that any other team is going to be competitive in 2026? Like, the only team that I think with the right head coach could take a real step forward and make a 1-year turnaround to be like a New England Patriots, be a Jacksonville Jaguars is, to me, or like a Chicago Bears as well, throw them in there, is the Atlanta Falcons. Like, I don't think the Giants with John Harbaugh are ultimately going to become a 10-win team and making the playoffs next year. But the Falcons, who have a lot of good pieces defensively and offensively with good coaching and maybe an improvement at quarterback, absolutely could make the playoffs. But when you're talking about this, and why I'm bringing this point up, is that, well, Miami's going to be bad in 2026, but if you play your cards right, you get John Harbaugh, you bring in the right GM, which I think is a big wild card ace up the Dolphins sleeve, which we'll get to here in a second. Well, now you're talking Miami has $100+ million in cap space in 2027, a potential top 5 pick, and then Harbaugh can really turn this ship around. So I do think Harbaugh would certainly be interested in Miami, at least to a little bit. Is it going to be the top choice for him? Maybe not. But if there is even a little bit of interest from Harbaugh on the Dolphins head coach opening, if they were to fire Mike McDaniel, and you learn that through back channels, Mike, get your ass out of here. Today's show is brought to you by Ethos, and after watching someone close to me go through loss, I saw how quickly grief can turn into financial stress. That experience changed how I think about protecting my family and my future. Life insurance isn't about expecting the worst, but it's about making sure the people you love are supposed to no matter what. That's why I recommend life insurance through Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You get a free quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. Application times may vary, but there's no medical exam. You just answer a few health questions. And as of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos by going to ethos.com/NFL Daily. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get your free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That is ethos.com/NFL Daily. Application times and rates may vary. Links in the description and comments of today's show. You look at John Harbaugh as a coach here, he is simply a winner. And although he only has one Super Bowl coming in the early 2010s, I think you still have to look at him as one of the best head coaches that currently works in the National Football League. When you have an above 50% record in the postseason, massive positive. A 60% career winning percentage when you include regular and postseason, that's just elite level stuff. He's taken the Ravens to 4 AFC championship games. You have seen him win Coach of the Year in 2019. The Ravens have consistently over the last 15 years won the AFC North, one of the most competitive divisions out there. Harbaugh has not got it done over the last 6 seasons, and it's why we've gotten to where we are today, where Baltimore ultimately fires him. But he is a guy that will consistently have you playing good football. He will consistently have you competing. He will establish a baseline, a culture, stability inside your organization. And I'm really intrigued with the idea of starting to build something legitimate in Miami. And I think hiring John Harbaugh alongside a new GM would be a great first step into turning this organization around. And I alluded to this just a bit ago. The Dolphins will show interest in John Harbaugh. Stephen Ross likes him a lot. This is not a secret. The question is, will Harbaugh have interest in the Miami job if he knew it would be open? If you can make it like a behind the scenes, like, hey, reach out to Harbaugh's agent. Would you be interested if we fired Mike McDaniel? And he says even, yeah, I'd be 25% interested. McDaniel, see ya. Like, I'm willing to take that risk, even if you fire Mike McDaniel and strike out on John Harbaugh, to go out and look at the head coach is available right now, because I do think they have gotten much better over the last 3 days. And how about this from Daniel Jeremiah, who obviously is not an insider. He is more or less a NFL draft analyst and thinker. He said Chargers assistant GM Chad Alexander has worked with John and Jim Harbaugh, worked inside the Ravens organization, now works with Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles as the assistant GM. It would be tempting to pair up Chad and John to run an organization. Proof of concept already in place. By the way, who started to interview Chad Alexander today? Oh, yeah, that's right. The Dolphins requested to interview Chad Alexander. You never know, folks. Now, that also could apply to the Falcons because the Falcons have a head coach and GM spot open. I do believe there is a legit chance Harbaugh and Chad Alexander team up, whether that is in Miami, whether that is in Atlanta. That's interesting. And Chad Alexander will dive into him more in depth tomorrow morning, so stay tuned for that. But he would be a no-brain hire if it meant you were getting John Harbaugh as well. But the point I just made a second ago is the head coaching pool did get good real quick. Like you saw Kevin Stefanski, a multi-time head coach of the year in Cleveland, get fired. Is he better than Mike McDaniel? I think they are very similar, but we've seen Stefanski go to the playoffs, and we've seen Stefanski win a playoff game. Now, is that a large baseline to jump over? No, but I think he is an upgrade over Mike McDaniel, even if it is a little bit marginal. But you got names like Jesse Minter, Robert Salah, Clint Kubiak, Jeff Hafley, Chris Shula, Vance Joseph, which, just think about this, guys, the ace up the sleeve here when it comes to the GM spot. That would be attractive to a veteran coach like John Harbaugh. It would, because if John Harbaugh comes in and is aligned with a GM like a Chad Alexander, well, that means Harbaugh will certainly have some value in the front office and personnel decisions. Like, that is something that he would like. But you also look at some of those head coach candidates, and you have the opportunity to make some strong pairings, even if you don't get John Harbaugh, right? John Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley both coming from the Packers is a possibility. Josh Williams coming in, and maybe you go with Robert Salah. That's an interesting pairing. John McKay and Chris Shula both coming from the Rams. Chad Alexander and Jesse Minter both coming from the Chargers. Minter and John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh and Chad Alexander. Like, you are capable of making a really strong pairing at GM head coach this offseason if you fire Mike McDaniel and go into the depths of the unknown. And I'm willing to do that because we know Mike McDaniel is not suitable to be the head coach of this team if the goal is to win in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. Stephen Ross, make it happen. Go get John Harbaugh and at least go fire Mike McDaniel. And when and if any of these things happen, we will have you covered on the channel and go live. So hit that sub button and lock us in here for daily Dolphins coverage.